Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Farhad Taghizadeh for those who don't know me from the participants. So from Tokai University, welcome to this webinar on role of green finance in achieving energy security in East Asia. So this is a joint webinar of Tokai University, Jiangsu University, Tianjin University, Huaqiao University, ICETS, and the Society for Studies of Climate Finance. So the topic is essential since we are in the wake of COVID-19. We have seen that the investments into renewable projects and green projects are shrinking. Therefore, it is crucial to look for new ways for promoting green finance. So this is the reason that today we have distinguished speakers. We are going to have 9 presentations by our distinguished speakers who are university professors or experts from industry and senior experts from industry. And then we will also have a Q&A and discussion. So let me invite the Vice Chancellor of Tokai University for delivering the opening remarks. Let me introduce our Vice Chancellor, Professor Sujinaka is a Vice Chancellor of Art and Humanity at Tokai University and an Emeritus of University of Tsukuba. And Dr. Sujinaka holds Doctor of Law degree of Political Science from Kyoto University. And he was the president of the Japanese Political Science Association and the director of the project called Comparative Empirical and Public Policy Study on Civil Society and Urban Governance between Japan and Asia. He has been conducting comparative surveys on civil society organization in 15 countries and accumulating data from over 63,000 associations since 1997. Professor Sujinaka, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very, very kind, detailed introduction. My name is Yutaka Tsujinaka. As he said, a comparative political scientist of civil society in Asia and the world. I've been doing more than 40 years, now Vice Chancellor, Tokai University. Since its founder, Tsuyoshi Matsuda, Tokai University has consistently focused on world peace and international cooperation, and especially in the 21st century, under the Chancellor Kiyoshi Yamada's leadership, Tokai University has focused on SDGs, improving quality of life. As you may know, today's moderator, Dr. Farhad Taghizadeh-Hesary, he's one of the most active and very productive young economists who specializes in environment and energy in Asia and the world. Several sustainable developmental goals, SDGs, are, as you know, directly and indirectly related to clean energy and the environment. Besides, promoting domestic renewable energy enhance energy security. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic that resulted uncertainty and the global economic recessions, the ongoing investment in renewable energy and energy efficiency projects are expected to fall drastically. This could threaten the expansion of green energy needed to enhance energy security and to meet the related SDGs. This means that the world needs to scale up green finance, to connect financial resources and business with environmentally friendly activities in the post-COVID-19. In the current insufficient investment level in the green sector, imperative policy reforms such as global or regional carbon taxation, national or regional rules, regulations, and strategy on green financing, supporting policy for facilitating the issuance of green bonds, the establishment of green credit rating to measure the greenness of the project, targeting the energy subsidies, reducing the direct and the indirect subsidies to fossil fuels, introducing public de-risking tools such as green credit guarantee scheme for reducing the risk of green investments are required to achieve the related SDGs. Today's webinar, the role of green financing achieving energy security in East Asia, gathers senior level expert, distinguished level persons, energy, environment, economics, and finance fields from academia, think tank, and industry, from Japan, China, Australia, Singapore, to discuss green finance role in promoting renewable energy projects in East Asia and the role of renewable energy and regional cooperation in enhancing energy security in the region. This webinar is an international joint event of Tokai University, Changsu University, Tianjin University, Huaqiao University, International Society for Energy Transition Studies, and Society for Studies of Climate Finance. I dearly hope in this 2021, after defeating the pandemic, we can gather directly and organize our next joint event soon. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Professor Sujinaka, for your insightful opening remarks. Thanks a lot. So with this, let's start this webinar. So in this webinar, we are going to have 2 sessions. Session 1 is on the role of green finance in promoting renewable energy projects, that we will have 5 presentations in this session. And then the second session is on the role of renewable energy in enhancing the energy security, that it will be 4 presentations. So I will share now I will share the agenda and the biography of the speakers. I just shared now in the chat box that you can, panelists and also our attendees can access to the agenda and also to the biography of our distinguished speakers. So let me also say hello and greeting to our attendees and participants. So as it is clear here, up to now we have 53 participants, and the number of attendees are also increasing. So more than 100 participants registered already for this event. So let's start with the first presentation. The first presentation is on the impact of green subsidies, responses from capital market, by Professor Zhang of Southwestern University of Finance and Economics. So let me introduce Professor Zhang. Professor Zhang is a professor of financial economics at Southwestern University of Finance and Economics of China. His research interests include climate finance, energy finance, and general economic and financial issues in emerging economies. He's the co-founder of the China Energy Finance Network and the president of Society for the Studies of Climate Finance. He's the associate editor of International Review of Financial Analysis, International Review of Economics and Finance, and Finance Research Letters. He also served as a guest editor for special issues in energy economics, energy policy, and several other prestigious journals. Professor Zhang, please.
All right, thank you, Farhad. Let me just try to share my screen. Okay, thank you very much again, Farhad, for inviting me to this webinar. I think the topic is very interesting and trendy. a lot of ongoing research and also policy relevance to this green finance area is going on. And also it's great pleasure to meet all this old friend and new friend online, although we hope that we could one day sit together to make a more interesting discussion. And let me try to start with my talk. So the topic of this talk is subsidies to green project and the responses from capital market. So this is not a single paper. Instead, it's a kind of serious ongoing research focusing on subsidies to green green projects. Well, let me start with a few figures, because subsidies has been a topic of interest for a long time. I think it's kind of a discussions, many discussions actually trying to say maybe we should remove energy subsidies. I think the IMF and others agencies are talking about that. This is a forecast for the next 30 years. So basically, as you can see from the left panel here, the general subsidies to energy sector is actually falling. But interestingly, you can see the yellow part is that subsidies to renewables, and renewables is becoming increasing, although the number is not very significant, but in terms of the shares of subsidies, the subsidies goes to renewable energy sector is going to be the main parts for the general subsidy to the energy sector. Oh, this is the picture for the worldwide cases. And then if you look at China, so this country has increased its budget for renewable subsidies continuously over the last 10 years. So the number sort of taken from China Ministry of Finance. So in 2020, although we have this pandemic of the COVID-19, that we still expect to have a significant increase in subsidies to renewable sector. So what happened, together with the general trend is something happened recently. I think the Chinese authorities has made this commitment of carbon neutrality in 2060. So, and a number of times the president of China has committed to reach net zero carbon emission in 2060. I think together with a group of countries in Europe, I think Japan also committed of carbon neutral in 2050. So this is quite important movement, and also it means there's a lot of work to be done. China is, one of the biggest emitters in the world. Achieving this net zero emissions that requires a lot more investments, policies, and also subsidies. So we would expect to see a lot more policy changes in the next few years or decades. So one of the numbers, there's a lot of studies going on. So I quoted one estimation by Tsinghua University Institute of Climate Change and Sustainable Development. They were saying that a new investment to the energy system between 2020 to 2050, the next 30 years, is going to around 138 trillion yuan RMB. And that is equivalent to 20 trillion US dollars. That's quite a lot of money kind of flooding into a energy sector. Particularly, we would expect to see a lot of investments go to renewable energy sector. At the same time, Ministry of Finance, I just discovered the fact that the Ministry of Finance in China just confirms that the subsidies to renewable energy in 2021 will have another increase of 5%, going to be 900 million US dollars. That's a lot of money going into renewable energy sector. But if you look at the difference between the amount of subsidies and the amount of investment required to achieve carbon neutrality, the gap is quite big. So that makes, subsidies alone cannot make the goal or achieve the ultimate development goal. But subsidies do have a lot of important roles in this whole process, because subsidies can send signals, subsidies can make a lot of things happen in the renewable energy sector. And the question is, how do we use these policy instrument to attract broader involvement. You know, the idea is that we want to have more investment. If we want to get this $20 trillion in place, then the private sector's involvement is critical. So that's what we are interested in. So in fact, one of the early studies, we did a paper in 2019. So we look at the historical developments in green in China for the green development. We want to see what are the main driving force, and we do find a very, very important role of financial development, especially capital market. If you see this graph, the first bar here is the contribution of stock market changes to stock market development to the non-hydro renewable growth in China. And obviously you can see the oil price and the emission itself is the driving force for the renewable energy sector. But capital market alone, it comes to about 15% of the variations in the growth, RE growth in China. So it's just indicating that the equity market or capital market in general tend to play a very important role in renewable energy sector. So come back to subsidies. You know, we look at the existing literature. So the role of subsidies to renewable energy is quite controversial in the literature. I mean, of course, it's that's part of the reasons why some people are suggesting we might want to remove subsidies to give market power. But indeed, some of the studies, like including one of our studies, is that policy support and investors' interests are very important. So the general idea we find is subsidies can provide direct benefits to promote RE development, like providing startup funds, so and lead the development to a particular sector. So that's just also proved by existing studies. Subsidy can also provide indirect benefits to renewable energy sector through their impacts on capital market. And some of the studies show that the subsidy policies can actually reduce price volatility. Therefore, it can bring benefits or give renewable energy firms a better financing environment. And so we also, in the previous studies, we also show that equity financing is the most important source of financing in the RE sector. Once again, just trying to confirm what I've said, you know, we need a lot of private involvement to achieve carbon neutrality, to develop the RE sector further. So the general idea we would believe is that if we have a positive response to the capital market and to the subsidy policies, and that will lead to low cost of financing, and it could also attract more investment from private sector.
2 minutes remain.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll be very quick. So as I said, it's going to be a series of ongoing research. So I'll use a couple of cases, very simple cases, to illustrate. So we focus on the policy announcements, and we use event study approach and taking listed firm as example, because that's where we get a lot of data. So I'm just showing you two graphs for the current studies we've done. So one is the FIT policies to solar PV sector. So we've seen that in the last few years, a lot of unexpected kind of subsidies. And we do show that in this graph. This is the event studies graph. So we have this time zero, this is the event day. And after that, we've seen a lot of negative responses from the markets. You know, once we have a cut of subsidies, the stock market respond negatively. But before that, you know, when people have expectations, and they tend to do a bit of favor to the market. Okay, and then another studies we look at the subsidies to new energy vehicles. And there's another very important issue at the moment. So we look at three policies: fiscal policy, preferential taxing, and government procurement. So we do find policies tend to have positive impacts on the financial market, but some of the policies does not, like fiscal subsidies. So what we've shown here is, you know, the policy responses, the capital market does respond to policies, right? Subsidy policies, but the response is different across policy types, and also it's changing over time. So what we want to see here is, you know, the findings we've got confirms our hypothesis that subsidies are important policy instruments, not direct support for the RE development, but also they can do that through capital market responses. The capital market in China is sensitive to the policies, and investors, for example, they do respond to policy shocks and create, better or worse financing conditions for the RE firms, and therefore gives a lot of space for policy design to the government, and also I think to be reconsidering the role of subsidies by looking at this kind of indirect effects through capital markets. But that's, as I said, it's a series of ongoing work, so there's a lot of other things we need to do. So the event studies give us short-term responses from capital market, but then next step we might want to look at long-term responses and see what's happening over there. And also we want to do more cross-sector comparisons. At the moment, the two cases I presented is just focused on one particular sector. And in the end of the day, we want to review the underlying mechanism. How does this work? There's kind of a series behind using like behavioral finance, looking at other asset pricing scenario. It might help us to understand how capital market responses to this kind of policy shocks. I think a lot of work is still going on, but with what happens in China and the commitment to carbon neutrality, a lot of investment across the world to the green sector, I think this is something very important to look forward to. All right. Thank you, Farhad. I think that's the end for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Taeyong, for the interesting presentation. So we will have all presentations, and then after all, we will have a Q&A session. And for the panelists can use the raised hand function if they have a question in the Q&A session, and participants can write their question or comment in the Q&A box. So the next presentation is on how does environmental policy stringency affect the efficiency of firms. This presentation will be by Professor Satoshi Honma of Tokai University. Let me introduce Professor Honma. Professor Honma is professor at the School of Political Science and Economics of Tokai University. Before joining the Tokai University, he was taught full-time at Kyushu Sangyu University. Dr. Honma received a BS degree and a PhD degree in economics from Chuo University in Japan. His research interests include environmental economics, energy economics, and sustainable development. Up to January 2021, Dr. Honma published several papers in prestigious journals, including Applied Energy, Energy Policy, Journal of Clean Air Production, Journal of International Trade and Economic Development. So, Professor Honma, mic is yours, please.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Farhad. My name is Satoshi Honma from Tokai University. As Professor Chan's presentation, renewable energy is important, but to this end, regulation is required. But everybody don't want to harm farmers' productivity introducing regulation. So I'd like to present a relationship between regulation and farmers' performance. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. This is the outline of today's presentation. As you know, environmental regulations were believed to increase compliance costs and then reduce productivity. However, Michael Porter advocated kind of win-win theory between environmental regulation and farmers' performance in 1990s, known as the Porter hypothesis. Jaffe and Perma 1997 classified Porter hypothesis into three variants: the weak, strong, and narrow hypothesis. Among the three variants, we focus on strong version. It implies that tightening environmental regulation can lead to productivity growth through innovation induced by regulation. Over the past 2 decades, a considerable number of studies have been made on testing the Porter hypothesis, but the results are mixed. That is, hypothesis is still an open question. Recent studies pay attention to heterogeneous effects of environment policies. For example, she and the 2017 test strong for the hypothesis for China's provinces, then find that the impact market-based instrument on firms' efficiency changes from positive to negative at single threshold point, but the impact of command and control changes positive, negative, negative, positive, and negative again at 2 points. Avericcio and the others 2017 also examine industry and farm level productive growth. They found that structural environment policy have a negative effect on less productive firms, but have a positive effect on the most productive firms. Okay, we're going to purpose a novelty of studies. The feature and novelty of our study are 4 points. First, we use the big data set that contains more than 200,000 commercial firms. Second, we apply the stochastic frontier analysis. It allows us to estimate the production frontier taking into account of inefficiency factors. Third, we investigate nonlinear impact of environment policy on farmers' performance. Lastly, we examine the impacts of policy not only total but also individual policy instruments such as tax, standards, and tourism schemes. Okay, I'd like to share with you our main results. We found environment policy heterogeneously affects firms' performance. To begin with, I will show you the results taking the total index as policy. There is a U-shaped relationship between environment policy and the firm's performance. Tightening environment policy will first reduce firm's performance in the early stage and then improve it later stage. Actually, there are various environment policies such as command and control, tax subsidy, and trade schemes. What are the difference of impacts of these policies? There are relationship between policy stringency and the firm's performance for each policy instrument. Among the 5 types of policy, we found nonlinear relationships for tax, trading schemes, and R&D subsidy. There exists U-shaped relationship between policy and performance. Okay, let me talk about this mission strategy. Except including an inefficiency term U, equation 1 is usual production function, and the inefficiency term U simultaneously estimated by equation 2 together with equation 1. Okay, let me briefly explain our data set. The environmental policy stringency index is taken from the OECD. Note that it takes 0 to 6 depending on stringency. This is summary statistics. Okay, we move on to our empirical results. This is the empirical results for total stringency index. The likelihood ratio test selects the nonlinear model with credible term of a linear model. Note that positive sign in the inefficiency equation implies an inefficiency factor. The results implies that there is U-shaped relationship between the policy stringency and productivity. This is the empirical results for individual environmental policy. Except the standard, The nonlinear model with quadratic term was selected by the likelihood ratio test, considering the signs of the coefficients. The strong Porter hypothesis for tax, credit scheme, and non-market policy. For tax and credit schemes, the coefficients of policy stringency and its squared or positive and negative signs, respectively, it suggests that there is a U-shaped relationship between policy stringency and performance. Okay, I'm gonna discuss based on the empirical results. There exists U-shaped relationship between environment policy stringency and firms' productivity with respect to total tax and trading schemes. That is, stricter environmental policy would help improve firms' productivity in the long run. Furthermore, using the estimate coefficient, we can obtain each turning point. The turning point of trading scheme is smaller than that of emission tax. This suggests that trading schemes can reach the region where firms' performance improve faster than the emission tax. Okay, let me summarize my talk. This study has examined strong Porter hypotheses applying stochastic frontier techniques to huge international microplan data. We have found that environmental policy stringency heterogeneously influences firms' efficiency. There is a U-shaped relationship between total environmental policy stringency and firms' performance. Among the 5 individual environmental policies, standard, tax, trading schemes, R&D subsidy, and no-market policy measures, such U-shaped relationships have also been observed for tax and trading schemes. That's all my presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Homma, for your interesting presentation and the valuable environmental policy implications that you provided. So next presentation, the third presentation, is on green VC investment opportunity under carbon neutral background. So the presentation is by Dr. Wang Xiaobo of Hydrogen Energy Technology Center. So let me introduce Dr. Wang. Dr. Xiao Wang is a senior engineer and director of Hydrogen Energy Technology Center in Guangdong Electric Power Design and Research Institute. He's also an expert and energy consultant of Asian Development Bank. His interests are renewable energy power generation, fuel cell, nuclear power generation, energy storage, carbon dioxide capture, utilization, and storage. He has conducted and joined several projects for the Ministry of Science and Technology, the National Key Research and Development Program, and national level demonstrations. Dr. Wang, we are ready for your presentation.
Okay, thanks for everyone, and thanks for this invitation. I may be the only one from the industry, apparently. I will make a very brief introduction of this topic because during the carbon neutral background, there is a lot of new investment in the energy sector. So I will go through quite 20-page slides, and where is dedication information of the solar, of the wind, offshore wind, especially offshore wind, and any other renewable industry. Can you see this slide? The first one, the new value chain creation. So
just would you please make it full screen so that it be.
Okay.
Clearly.
Better?
Click it. Fantastic. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So in this carbon neutral background, there is for sure that renewable energy will be increased significantly. But we need also to have the tolerance for the existing fossil fuel power plant, like the gas turbine or the traditional coal-fired plant. So we divide the new development area, like the offshore wind, including the onshore wind power, and the nuclear energy. Nuclear energy will have some new opportunity under this circumstance, because after the Fukushima, the whole industry has been paused for quite a long time, but especially with a new improvement of the dedicated, the fourth generation reactor, I think the nuclear will see some better future compared with the current situation. And the natural gas. So the emission of natural gas is a very interesting issue. So it's a fossil fuel, but maybe cleaner than the coal. So during a lot of province energy policy for the next 5 years, the natural gas position is very clear. So the increasement. And for the hydrogen energy, hydrogen is not a primary energy, it's a secondary energy. So how to optimize the deployment of the hydrogen will be a vital question for the next 5 years. And for the solar, especially for the perovskite. So its potential is huge. Almost all the wind or the solar company has a huge investment. And for the photochemistry, which we call the not electrical application of the solar, will be have its role in the next 5 years, and the smart grid, that's for sure, for the integration of the variable renewable energy. And the carbon capture is vital, especially for China. China is a very coal-dependent country, so all the carbon capture, especially the utilization technology, it's crucial. Because I am the person against the carbon storage, because it's waste money and has no commercial value in the future. So we are a lot of national owned company invest in the carbon utilization, like in the organic or inorganic or biologic. So we try our best for the carbon utilization. This is a very complicated diagram we have done for the central government, for the Energy Bureau, Chinese Energy Bureau, for the fourth 5 years, fourth 5 years plans. So in order to meet the increased primary energy, like all the renewable.
Dr. Wang, is it possible that you zoom it because it is not visible? Yeah, it's better.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will go through it. And the CO2 capture will be linked directly to all the current, to the chemical, to the coal chemical, to the oil chemical, and the traditional thermal power plant. And heat play a very important role, and the energy. Electricity and hydrogen will be complete each other. So we can see that in the next 5 years, for the VC investment opportunities, the secondary energy carrier is very important, especially for the hydrogen. But because for the electricity, a lot of big player has already set their position. It's very hard for the small and the medium company to compete with them. But for the hydrogen, it's a new open market, and it's also vital for the energy transmission, especially for the cross-continental. There is no other way. Hydrogen is a transmissible renewable, especially with the liquid hydrogen case. That's what the Japan is undertaking. So we can see that the new opportunity will be shown on the secondary energy storage, transportation, and terminal application. It will be different from the current scenario. Okay, for the offshore, this is we have done for the also for the central government, also for the Guangdong province government. We have divided. It's very in detail. I cannot go through every item, but we can see that in summary, the core components and the core material will be the new investment area for the wind power generation industry. We can see that the gearbox and the bearing are the two major new opportunity because we have some import substitution here. Another thing is very interesting for the intelligent operation and maintenance for the wind, because during the large deployment, a lot of offshore or onshore wind power plant will be put into operation 5 years. 5 years is a guarantee from the wind power supplier. After the 5 years guarantee expire, so the operation will be a very huge market. For the traditional solar, we have divided it in a very detailed industrial chain. So core components will be a very interesting emerging area because for the general silicon, there is no more secret. Next one. Okay. Okay, and this is a diagram of the thin film power PV. So compound semiconductor, and we see that the new technology. So I cannot give it in detail because of the time limitation. This is we put a lot of importance. There is also the pilot plant. Our company is the EPC contractor for this kind of pilot plant. The new application of the solar energy. So especially the photo catalyst, the industrial speed is very quick, very quick. We can use it to produce the ammonia, to use it as a CO2 utilization. A lot of new opportunity. Okay, for the nuclear power industry, it's very mature industry. New opportunity is very limited. So it's similar with the previous slides. The material will be very important for the new opportunity, especially for the alloy. Yeah, next one. Next one is for the gas turbine. So China has set two, we call the aircraft engine and the gas turbine. So it's very challenging. So for the whole industry improvement, the area is grouped across the east of China and near Shanghai. So this will contribute like 100 billion yuan GDP in the next 5 years. And for the biomass, in China is very tricky. It's a very small scale because the majority of the biomass has been also in the traditional biomass fossil fuel plant for the power generation. So it's tricky, but we can consider that the second generation, the bio-ethanol and the second generation of the biodiesel will go faster than the previous stage, but the market size will be limited. And for the hydrogen production, hydrogen will be goes very fast in the next 5 years, especially the renewable energy hydrogen production will be in the same ratio with the renewable energy installation. You can see that it's a very complete list of company. So that's we call it's a VC Bible. VC Bible. Also for the hydrogen transmission and storage, the liquid in the very low temperature and organic liquid will go very fast because our company, the China Energy Construction Group, will invest significantly in this direction. All the candidates we have already have a preliminary negotiation. And for the hydrogen energy application, I will not talk about the transportation anymore, but I will focus on this, the chemical, because hydrogen is always a very important chemical industry material. So in this case, the substitution from the traditional fossil fuel to the renewable hydrogen is already very big market. And for the PEM, for the fuel cell, the import substitution will be the main trend in the next 5 years. So a lot of things currently is manufactured in Japan, in Korea, and in Europe. But I think China will have its homemade substitution that in the next 5 years. We can see all these candidates. And for the LNG, we can see that in the first slide, the LNG or the liquefied hydrogen, it's similar. So we can see that it goes very quickly. Once we talk about the hydrogen, the fuel cell, we always talk about the membrane. The membrane will play a more important role in the future for the separation membrane, the special membrane, the photoelectric film, and the ion exchange. This is especially in the hydrogen fuel cell. Will triple its market size in the next 5 years. And the SOFC is for the power generation. Smart grid and energy storage will also very potential in the next 5 years, especially for the currently the chemical energy storage play an important role. But in the future, we consider that the mechanical energy storage, like the compressed air, like the flywheel, will be more and more important, especially the compressed air. The pilot plant of 100 megawatt is under construction. Okay, for smart grid, and I think the time is up. I will go very quickly about this ultra high temperature power transmission. Ultra is very typical in China because China has already played the most important role in the world. I will go through it quickly. And the power electronic, as we can see that it's also a strength of China. I will go only the CCUS, the CO2 utilization. So all the technology in the CO2 utilization will be very welcome by all these VC investors. We have done some national R&D project. So every week I got the phone call from the potential VC. Okay. Due to the time limitation, I cannot go through every slide of it. We have done very detailed the value chain decomposition. If you are interested, we can talk about after the meeting. Okay, thank you everyone. I think I made a little bit over time, so sorry for that.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Wang Xiaobo. So your talks were so interesting, coming from the industry and Chinese government plan. And as we see here in this presentation, the plan is very comprehensive in order to achieve the carbon neutrality. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wang. So please be with us. We will have question in the Q&A session. So the next presentation, presentation 4, is on benefits and challenges in financing green project by Dr. Shunpeng Shi of the University of Technology of Sydney. So let me introduce Dr. She is Principal Research Fellow at the Australia-China Relations Institute of the University of Technology, Sydney. And he's the Committee President for the International Society for Energy Transition Studies, a council member and past president of the Chinese Economics Society of Australia, and Dean and Chief Economist of the Australian Energy Transition Institute. In 2020, the Australian named him as the top 250 researchers in Australia and the field leader in environmental law and policy. He serves as the editorial role in many journals, including Applied Energy, Energy Strategy Review, and Frontiers in Energy Research. So Dr. Shi, please.
Okay, thanks, Farhad, for the lovely introduction. And good, I think most people are good evenings, and nice to see all the new face even through the webinar. And also quite happy to share my views on some issues that might be relevant to the Green Financial Project. But before that, I just a few words about ICES. The ICES, International Society for Energy Transition Study, is a organizations we have been working on in the past years and was formally established recently. So I noticed that 5 or the 9 presenters are our founding members, and also you have 3 or 4 of our vice presidents. Farhad himself is the vice president for academic, and the first president, Da Yong, is the vice president for publication. And the next president after me, Dr. Ji Chang, is the president for promotion and development. The society purpose is to promote the energy transition studies and build a platform and to channel our academic research to the real policy and the industry. On the other hand, we also welcome the feedback from industry and the government. So it's a new platform, and we want to build a multiple purpose, multiple stakeholder ones, and we welcome any other interested people to look at our website and join if you are interested. For my presentation today, I will not go for any technical detail. I will share funding of my field research what's relevant to the debate on the green finance. The first slide, I share one of the findings which are just complete a report for UN. It's about the extractive industry in the energy transition. And pertaining this workshop, I find one issue is quite interesting, probably from energy side, we didn't pay much attention. It's the need to finding a green mining project. Because usually people tend to think mining will be phased out because people usually link that with fossil fuel. But for the renewable energy, there is actually more demand of mineral. Usually they're named as a critical mineral, that those minerals that specifically need for support of green technology development. Here, the second paragraph and name some that's relevant to the storage. Those kind of minerals are indispensable part of the storage and clean energy development, and they are expected to be growth very dramatic in the next few decades. For this kind of green mine or minings, they need to be green because they consume energy. However, my current study finds that it's very, very challenging because the mining, if people work on that, the mining sector is quite volatile. It's subject to the commodity cycles. And then, so the third paragraph, you will see the example about the copper mine. It could be lifespan, could be 5 to 70 years. It's not a technical reason, it's because market reason. So in that case, as we find the literature find that it's very difficult to finance green mining initiative because it's too risky. I think this one probably example hopefully can complement the literature about the challenge that faced by green project finance. And another study we did also actually with the together when we had a meeting with Farhad, Dayan, Zhiqiang, and others almost back to 1.5 years ago, we discussed is about the benefit of green project. We use the China's three goals project, and we did some micro level data study. The finding is quite interesting and significant. Find that this kind of project have quite significant externality, which will not very much discussed, at least in China's context, is that the project can promote the firm level productivity growth. This kind of example is very important because when we discuss green finance or finance a green project, one of the reasons is that on the one hand, the project has a lot of benefit in terms of environment and others. On the other hand, there is a higher risk and slow recovery process, means that the rate of return is lower. And in the mining case, as you see, there's a higher uncertainty. Those are all justified policy interventions, or put another way, special arrangement for green finance. Means that the normal finance wouldn't meet what we aim for. Then we need a set special categories or policy to support that. These findings suggest that a green project like even the hydro project has benefited that beyond what the finance or investor can benefit, but the national wise or economic wise is reasonable. That means that if some projects which we cannot internalize all the benefit, there will be policy support from the public will be highly justifiable. And in early days, and this is a project financed by Area Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, we actually examined the challenges to how to finance off-grid renewable energy. At that time, we established a framework to see what are the challenges in terms of off-grid renewable energies. We separated the challenge into 3 categories. The first category is the feasibility, how to make the project bankable. And second, for the off-grid renewable energy and other decentralized renewable, relatively small size renewable energy, is whether it can be sustainable once we have the project, but whether the project can really last as it is or they are expected to sustain. And third one, more interested in the replicability, whether the project can be replicated in other areas. We want a financial regime that not just make the project can be bankable and established, created. We also want that project to be sustainable, and more importantly, in order to maximize the benefit from those kind of projects, we want the project that can be replicated in other place. So for that purpose, we created this kind of framework, and we also survey about 100 people who work in the finance sector or in the government or in the renewable energy to see the importance of these 3 dimensions. And the right-hand side is the weights. So roughly feasibility 40%, sustainability 34%, and replicability 24%. I think this might be also useful when we look at green finance and assess the project finance. We also need that beyond the feasibility. We also look at the sustainability and the replicability in order to achieve what the purpose of green finance. It's not just one project. We want to actually deliver the environment outcome while we support the economics. And we also actually ranking the existing instruments that have been popularly used to support renewable energy finance, including off-grid, not just off-grid, but including we ranking in terms of each of the dimensions. As well, we have a weighted average and overall. So say the top 5 effective instruments in promoted renewable energy project. First is the PPP, public-private partnership, which or quite intensively used in the infrastructure because the long project times and the slow or lower rate of return. And the second one is feed-in tariff premium, which is the public subsidy or guarantee the income for renewable energy. A startup grant comes from the third one. A power purchase agreement is specific for electricity, means that you guarantee you will have a market. And the fifth one is a tax concession and exemption. I want to go to the list. The paper has been published a few years back. It's just give one of the example what policy might be useful in terms of the improve the feasibility, sustainability, and replicability of renewable energy project. I think this is a summary on that, and we all will not go to much detail. And just one recent study, we look at how the financial instrument and financial market work in terms of energy transition. We use the data from the BRICS country for about 20 years. And I think two interesting findings. Probably there might be some controversies here. Seems like I'm relatively negative to the private credit. The first finding is that the financial market plays a specific catalytic role in electric transition. It have a significant role, and public debt securities make a significant contribution. Means the positive to facilitate the transit to low carbon electricity generation. And so that means that we support the government provide public capital in order to facilitate advanced energy transition. And also on the contrary, the private sector will hinder the electricity transition because they more pursue economic return and leave the benefit of renewable energy and others outside. I think the last slide I'm talking about what role can the public play. We use one of the China's evidence to find that public's appeal can promote or push local government to enforce strict environment regulation, and that will be further encourages firms to invest in green investment. Those actually, I think overall, we show that the green project have benefited beyond what the investor can benefit. And in order to balance the slow or lower return and the higher uncertainty risk and the broad benefit, we need a green finance and also needs appropriate instrument to promote the finance the project, not just make the bankable, but also can be replicated and to maximize the contribution to overall energy and low carbon growth. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Rock, for the interesting presentation. So let's move to the next presentation of this session, which is on how do energy prices affect the renewable energy stocks. It's by Dr. Zhang. Let me introduce Dr. Zhang. Zhang is an associate professor at the Institute of Science and Development, Chinese Academy of Sciences, CAS. His research interest covers broad areas of big data and energy finance, energy economics and energy strategy management, forecast modeling and risk management, and financial econometrics. He has published more than 150 articles in peer-reviewed journals. He's principal investigator of over 10 grants from the National Natural Science Foundation of China and CAS. He serves as senior editor, associate editor, and subject editor for Finance Research Letter, International Review of Financial Analysis, International Review of Economics and Finance, and he's also co-founder of China Energy Finance Network. So we are happy to have him. Dr. G, please. So your mic is mute. Would you please?
Okay.
Yeah. And please.
Okay. Thanks, Farhad. Thanks for organizing a wonderful workshop. My presentation is about the impact of energy price changes on the renewable energy markets. So it finished last year with my co-author Dayong. We want to show the asymmetric effect and the extreme response when the market present high volunteer. So the story is simple. We want to show, we know in the long term, the development of the renewable energy industry and depends on the policy regulation and also the technology progress. But in the short term, the linkage between the renewable energy and the fossil fuel is close. So we want to show when the fossil fuel price increased or decreased, what will happen on the renewable energy markets. So in our paper, we explore the influence of various fossil fuel energy prices on renewable energy markets using a network approach. By this way, we can show how the different fossil fuel energy prices can influence the renewable energy's performance on the stock markets, and we also show whether there is an asymmetric effect when the price increased or decreased. So we can see whether they behave different when the price is different, and we also can see when the market is under the extreme situation. We know in recent years the energy price is present high volunteer and decreased sharply. So we want to show we use the value at risk to measure the extreme situation to see under this extreme situation what will happen for the renewable energy markets. And there are many papers focus on this topic, and they analyze the effect of oil price on the returns of renewable energy, and they also link the oil and the renewable energy to some extent. But most papers ignore the impact of other fossil fuel on renewable energy. For example, the natural gas, the electricity, or the carbon price. So in our paper, we want to involve all the fossil fuel energy prices in one group, one network. So by this way, we can intuitively to disclose the impact of different energy prices on the renewable energy, and to identify the performance of this fossil fuel. So it may be helpful to guide the portfolio for the investor in the energy markets. In this paper, our contribution are follows. First one, we extend the bivariant framework to the group framework. We include 5 fossil fuel energy with the renewable energy in one system, so we can consider all the energy system in the unified network. And by this way, we can clearly to see the structure of the system and to identify the direction and the magnitude of the spillover from the fossil fuel energy prices to the renewable energy stock markets. And we also can see whether there is the asymmetric effect, and also there are some extreme spillover between the fossil fuel and the renewable energy markets. And we also use a rolling window approach, which can investigate the dynamic evolution and the evolution of the spillover. So by this way, we can depict a whole picture to see how the fossil fuel energy prices can influence the stock market's performance of the renewable energy. And we also can see the path of the spillover. And the methodology we used is simple. It's a widely used approach proposed by DY's framework. It's a network. So in the network, the basically measure is the returns measures. In this paper, we construct 4 return measures. The first one is a normal one. We use the log difference between the price to show the returns, and we also use positive returns and negative returns to see when the price increased or decreased, whether there is some difference. And we also want to consider when the market is under the extreme situation. So what will happen? So we use the value at risk to measure the extreme returns. So by this way, we can use the 4 different returns to show 4 different networks and see some different stories. So the basic model is in this slide. It's proposed by the device framework, and the core of this model is matrix, is the connectedness matrix. It's based on the WAR model and the generalized variance decomposition. So using this matrix, we can show the element in this matrix is a contribution of which one environment can influence another environment. So by this way, we can construct a system, and and each row can show the contribution of the system to one variable, and each column can show the contribution of each variable to the system. So by this way, we can see the spillover between the 2 parents, and also can see the spillover of the whole system. Our date used based on the European date. So we use the European Renewable Energy Index to show the renewable energy performance. And we also use the price in the European, for example, the Brent, the UK natural gas futures price, and also the EU ETS carbon price and the electricity index to show the different fossil fuel energy prices. And we use the date ranging from the 2008 to 2019 to show a long-term difference. And there are some basically statistics we can show the standard deviation to show the carbon markets present more volunteer, and some the other prices present similar. And we also estimate the marginal distribution for each return. We in this paper we use 4 different gauge model and 6 different residual distribution, and by combining these 2 models, we can obtain 24 different models, and we select the optimal model for each return. And we can say for each return they have be decided by the optimal model, and it's a coefficient table. And this table shows the full sample result. In this table, we can see the panel A, B, C, D to show the different return networks. For panel 1, we can see in this panel the influence of the different fossil fuel on renewable energy is larger than the renewable energy to the different fossil fuel. So the whole contribution, or I mean the net contribution of renewable energy to the system is negative. And we also can see in this system, the contribution of electricity and the coal is positive. So it means in this system, electricity and the coal have the net information flow to the other fossil fuel and the renewable energy. And we also can see the totally connectedness is higher, is about 0.292. So it means the linkage between the renewable energy and the fossil fuel is closed in most times. And we also can see when we compare the positive returns and the negative returns, they have the similar structure. In both panels, the contribution of the renewable energy to the system is negative. So it means in this system, renewable energy is the net receiver to receiving information from the fossil fuel. But the situation is different in the value at risk network. In this network, the information for the renewable energy is positive. So it means it can contribute to the fossil fuel change. And we also show the dynamic result. We can see it show it showed a decrease in the first half of the sample and increased in the second half of the sample. So this trend is opposite to the change of the oil price. So we know since the second half year of 2014, the oil price has decreased sharply, but we can see that the degree of the total connectedness is increased. So it means with when the oil price decreased, the influence to the other fossil fuel is consistent. So we can see the total degree is higher. And the right figure also shows the different contribution for each fossil fuel to the renewable energy. We can see at the most times, Brent, the oil prices can contribute more to the change of the renewable energy, and followed by the electricity and the coal. So it means for these three fossil fuels, they can influence most to the renewable energy at most times. And we also show the dynamic change, the dynamic trend of the positive return network and the negative return network. To compare these two lines, we can say at most of the time, the degree of the positive, the degree in the positive return network is larger than the negative return network. So it presents a bit asymmetric effect, and the whole trend of these two lines is similar to the return network. So it decreased the firstly and then increased at some degree. And we also present the different contribution for each fossil fuel to the renewable energy. It presents similar. It presents some peaks in different periods. The first peak appeared to from 2008 to 2009. It's the period from the post-financial crisis. So at this time, the market is recovering. So it means when the price is increasing, the trend and the co-movement among the different fossil fuel and has increased. So the degree has also increased, and the contribution of this fossil fuel to the renewable energy is increasing. And finally, we present the dynamic total degree for the value at risk connectedness network. We can see it's different from the other three network, because the total degree for the value at risk connectedness present flat and ranging around 0.4. So it's not a clear trend for this line. I think it's because when we consider the extreme situation for each market, it's heavily depend on the forcing factor by the market itself. So the interdependence between the among the different variables is very smaller. So the trend is stable and not present.
One minute.
Okay, thank you. So it also can be supported by the right figure. In this figure, we cannot have a clear conclusion for which variable can contribute more to the renewable energy. So by this way, we can know under the extreme situation, it's difficult for the investor to operate its portfolio, because they can difficult to know which fossil fuel can influence the renewable energy heavily. And finally, is the conclusion. It's some conclusion which I have introduced before, so I just skip this part. Okay, thank you. It's my presentation.
Thank you very much, Zhang. It was very interesting empirical work that you presented. So before we wrap up this session, so we are going to have a Q&A session, and I also have some questions, and Dr. Yao Shuyu, he will also help for this purpose for discussing. Let me introduce Yao, who works as a research fellow at Financial Engineering Research Center of Tianjin University. His research is mainly financial markets, and he has publication in different journals, including Pacific Basin Finance Journal, Accounting and Finance, Finance Research Letters, Economic Modeling, and so on. So I have two questions, and Yao, if you also have question, after that you can ask. In addition to that, if our participants or panelists have questions, they are also welcome to ask. So my first question is to Dayong. Dayong, you had an excellent presentation talking about the subsidies. My question is that how to measure the optimal level of subsidies? Because if we are talking about switching subsidies from fossil fuels to renewable and green sector, so from one side it is important, but from another side, too much subsidy to the green sector might make this sector weak, as we see in many countries. For example, even in China or many other countries, hydrogen sector or EV or FCVs or many other green technologies are so much relying on government money. And up to when and up to what level this need to be continued? So this is my question. And my second question is to Dr. Wang. Dr. Wang, are you here? Dr. Wang. Okay, Dr. Wang, he's with us.
You can ask the question and I will tell him the question later.
Okay, so I have the questions to Dr. Wang. His presentation was also excellent, talking about the China, China. So it's very broad, talking about different fields. So my focus is on hydrogen. I want to know that what are the barriers and bottleneck for development of hydrogen projects in China, whether difficulty of accessing to finance or technology and so on, and what are the solutions, especially from the side of government. And second question to Dr. Wang is that Dr. Wang mentioned that Chinese governments wants to promote more made in China products when talking about green technology. So now we have many foreign investors. For example, in the hydrogen sector, we see many Japanese companies in China. Toyota invested a lot in the hydrogen sector, especially in the transportation. So in line with the new policy of Chinese government, I would like to know that if Chinese government is still welcoming foreign direct investment, or it is, their preference is more on domestic resources. So this is also interesting, since we have Japanese participants also, they would like to know about Chinese government's policy on this. So Yao, do you have questions or comments on the presentations?
Okay, first, thanks for having me. Sorry, can you hear me? Okay, thanks for having me here today. To be honest, I'm not the research file on me is not focused on the energy finance. So today will be a great opportunity for me to learn a lot of new knowledge, especially in the energy finance. And I want to ask about two questions. The first question I want to ask Professor G. Well, my research focus is on corporate finance. In corporate finance, the most important part is focus on the identification strategy as well as the endogeneity part. In order to give a very robust causal relationship or causal effect, we need to put a lot of efforts in the endogeneity part as well as the channel analysis. So in energy finance, I noticed there are a lot of researchers, they didn't do the endogeneity or often use the time series model and without the potential channel analysis. So in energy finance, how can they identify the causal relationship or to deal with the endogeneity problems, or the endogeneity problems is not very important in the energy finance? That's my question. That's my first question. And the second question is, is also for Professor G. Well, I noticed that Professor G have published a lot of papers, maybe more than 150. And I also participated in the conference that held by Professor G. So I want to ask questions about the frontiers and the future development in energy economics. Could you please give us some guidance on the specific ideas to guidance the young scholars how to conduct the frontier research in the energy finance? That's my question for Professor G. And my second question is for Professor Zhang. Zhang, and I have read a lot of papers from Professor Zhang, and I want to ask Professor Zhang, Professor Zhang's idea about how to conduct some energy research or energy issues in corporate finance. For example, recently I have also done some research focused on green innovation, green loan policy, or environmental corporate social responsibility. I want also got some guidance from Professor Zhang about how to conduct some corporate issues in the energy finance. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Yes, Dayong, would you please start? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll start with Farhad's question. I think it's a very, very interesting question. I think this is a question that has been bothering me for a long time. Optimal policy is a very difficult question to answer, first of place. I know that the arguments about subsidies, that subsidies could help developing an industry. Also, it can destroy that industry somehow, you know. But the key thing here is that we know for the renewable energy sector that many of the studies showing that without subsidies is very difficult for the starting point here. So that to answer the question, to find the optimal strategy, we need to understand the mechanism. This is one thing I was talking about, trying to review the underlying channels and how this kind of subsidy leading to market responses, you know, what kind of channels, because what we found that different type of policies, if you refer to you know, different sectors or in different part of the industrial chain, then the policy effectiveness will be very, very different. So what we want to do is trying to understand the channel and also identify the better strategy or more effective strategies towards a certain kind of industry. So the key thing here is like to help investment flooding in and also trying to push innovation. I think that's the key objective for subsidies. And well, nothing when we look at the capital market responses, because I mean, if you look at it, this new renewable sector is high risky, right? So any new sectors, high risky, low return, right? So it's against the basic principles in finance. You expect high return, high risk, but in this sector we have high risk, low return. It's obviously it's not sustainable. So that's the reason why we do need subsidies, government support to balance these two relationships. But of course, you know, in the long term, so that the subsidies, you know, when should the subsidy come in, different stages, when they should quit. This is a very important question. That's what we hopefully through our studies we could contribute to these arguments. Well, I hope that solves some of your concerns. Second, I thank you very much for Dr. Wang. I think you were talking about the energy corporate finance. So I think this is one of the areas I was looking at. You know, it's reasonably new because when we look at the corporate finance, there's everything there. So we talk about the CSR, ESG. So it's kind of a general topic. But coming to energy sector, I mean, the mainstream finance people, they don't care about the energy sector. This is a problem when we first study corporate finance. And you know what, I had my experience submitting my paper to energy economics and they don't like it. And I submitted to a finance journal, they don't like it either because you know, either way, they said, you know, corporate finance, they say, this is an energy issue, so we don't care about it. And I submitted to energy that this is corporate finance and we don't like that anyway. But now in the recent years, I think people really understand that in the energy sector, they have their own characteristics, that are some kind of distinctive features that worthy for investigation. I think what we should do is because we the biggest constraint for corporate finance studies in the energy sector is the sample. I think even with a country like China or bigger countries, the sample size is really small, and first of all, it will affect the result. The second, whether this kind of sample can represent the general picture. So I think one of these things I'm trying to work on with is trying to enlarge the sample in the sense that I'm looking at the international comparisons, right? So not only focusing on one country, we look at the different regime, kind of institutional features across countries, regulatory differences, and maybe legal differences. That may also affect corporate behavior. So we want to have a bit more general picture. I think that's one of the direction. And another direction is that we might be able to use some kind of this kind of new technologies like text analysis or big data, trying to dig into deeper information that is not just the from the balance sheet for this general kind of financial statement, but rather some more unique features of energy sector that hopefully create a kind of margin for corporate finance in the energy sector in particular. I think it's very interesting and it's promising.
Thank you very much, Zhang.
Right.
Okay. So next, shall we have shall we hear from Dr. Wang about the questions? Do you want I repeat the question? Okay, so the first question that I ask is that, first of all, your presentation was excellent. You brought a big picture and a comprehensive plan that Chinese government has for achieving the carbon neutrality. So I'm focusing on hydrogen since it is your specialty. So what are the barriers and bottleneck for development of hydrogen projects in China, whether accessing to finance or technology? And if, for example, it is technology, what are the solutions? Or if it is finance, what are the solutions? This is the first question. Secondly, you mentioned that Chinese government, in line with the new energy policy, has planned for promoting made in China products when talking about the green technologies. So, however, on the other hand, as we have seen, as we know, we have several foreign investors in Chinese markets. I'm talking about Japan, for example, in the hydrogen sector. Toyota invested a lot in China. So in line with the new strategies of Chinese government, whether these kinds of new FDIs are going to be welcomed or whether China wants to focus more on domestic resources.
Okay, for the first question, the main challenge and the main barrier for the hydrogen development in China, first thing is the regulation. So for example, for the construction of the refueling, hydrogen refueling station, how we can get a permit. This is a struggling issue, very in detail, but sometimes we need 1 year to get a permit for the construction, and sometimes we get a very good site, but there is no way to get the permit from the government. First thing, the regulation. Second thing is that the comparison of the fuel cell vehicle and the EV, because these two technology are not in the same mature level. So sometimes people compare the current technology maturity of EV with the new technology from the hydrogen vehicle. So in this case, the challenge of the economy. So for example, people complain that the hydrogen utilization cost is much higher than the electricity utilization cost from the EV. That's the second one. Third one is the hydrogen transmission and transport, especially for the long distance. For example, for two things, it's for the energy import cross-continental. Second is a very long distance, like 2,000 kilometers. We have done some preliminary study, like transmitted the liquid hydrogen from Inner Mongolia to Guangdong. So it's very hard because there is no regulation. We come back to the first one. So in summary, it's the price for the first one is the regulation. Second one is the price for the application. And for the second question, for the new FDI, it's okay. The Hyundai has established their fuel cell factory in Guangzhou, and Toyota has various location for their hydrogen industry. But China want to choose all these components. The big company, they are the integrator, so it's very welcome. But we hope that for the fuel stack, for the fuel cell stack, for all the pump, for the circulation pump, we hope that it's the big FDI comes. We have a huge integrator, but we hope that all the components, all the material can be manufactured in China. That's also in this new trial of the fuel cell vehicle. There is the manufacturing in China for some components is mandatory in this application. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Dr. Zhang, can we hear from you?
Okay. Thanks, Farhad. Thanks, Dr. Yao, for the question. Actually, although I published some papers, but I also want to know what is the frontier for the energy finance. So I always think, I have a slide showing in many universities. It's the co-movement between the energy price and also the serial development of the energy finance. We can see when the energy price is developing, it's increase or decrease, the hot topic or the curve of the serial is different. So 10 years ago, I see a report. It focused on the a news about some investor to use the Twitter to forecast the stock markets. So I want to try whether we can use the big data, the Twitter data to forecast the energy price. So I published the first paper to use the Google search to forecast and to investigate the influence between the Google search data and with the energy price. So I think in our field, the story or the idea is more important than the methodology. So we should think what is the new topic in this field. For example, in 7 years ago, I see a news about the Facebook. They discuss the social network. So I want to try whether we can use a network approach to investigate the structure between the different markets. So I investigate the 24 oil markets around the world, and to see which country has the leader role in the oil markets. So I think it's a different story to say how we can get some new idea, to get some new story for the research. Recently, I work with Dayong to do some research on the climate finance. So we launched a society for the climate finance. It's the first society in China focused on this topic. I think it's different from the green finance because it has a larger scale. It involves the economy, the finance, and the climate change, and also the energy. So it's a big system. So we can consider some new topic and some new story in this under this framework. And our society now have more than 400 members. I think if you are interested, you can join us. We can discuss some possible collaboration in the future, and we can do some surprising or some interesting work. So it's my answer.
Thank you very much, Zhang, and thank you, Yao, for your comments and questions. So we came to the end of this session. So before we go to break, let's have a group photo. So I would like to ask the panelists to turn on your cameras, please, and let's have a photo together. Okay, Professor Xie, Bai-Chen Xie, Dr. Wang, Dr. Wang Xiaobo, Dr. Shu Tan, Dr. Xiaobo, would you please join us? Dr. Xiaobo? He's busy. Okay, so let's 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you very much. So we are a little bit behind the schedule. So let's make the break 5 minutes and we come back 5:45 Japan time and 4:45 China time. So see you in 5 minutes. Okay, welcome back. So let's start the second session. The second session is on the role of renewable energy in enhancing the energy security. We are going to have 4 presentations by 4 distinguished speakers. The first presentation of this session is on renewable energy and energy security. This is a case study on Germany and it's providing lessons to East Asia. The presentation is by Professor Yong-Hu Zhang, who is an associate professor at the School of Business, Singapore University of Social Sciences. He specializes in economics of climate change, energy and security, oil and economy, and the economics of electricity market. He received his PhD in economics, environmental and resources economics from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, USA. So Professor Yong-Hu, please.
Okay, thank you for your kind introduction. So do you see my screen, right?
Yes, it is clear.
Yeah, it's very nice to see old friend and make a new friend with this workshop. Okay, thank you very much for inviting me to this workshop. So my presentation today is an ongoing one. It's how renewable energy investment or development influence energy security by taking Germany as a case and see the lessons to East Asia. Okay, this is my agenda. First, I show the definition of energy security, how it is understood in academia and industry, followed by my research question and framework, and what indicators are chosen, and some discussions about the result, and draw lessons to East Asia. So energy security is typically understood as just availability. For example, like taking the RP ratio for world fossil fuels, oil is about 50 years, coal a little more than 100 years, natural gas is about 90 years. This is typically understood as energy security. But this is not enough because in economics, energy security is defined the adequate and reliable supply of energy resources at reasonable price. So how do we find adequacy? It's an endowment. What about reliability? Is the security of delivery. Or what's the price? How we define the regional price. So we need more workable definition, workable concept following this definition. So I present the four perspective on energy based on how energy resource reach the end user. First, from the scientific aspect, we have availability of energy resources. Available energy resources must be processed and delivered to end user. This requires technology, which comes from engineering perspective. And then, what if society does not accept the resource or technology? For example, coal in Western country is shown. So it comes from the environmental aspect. And finally, economic aspect, how affordable the energy is. With this, we have a more refined concept using that availability, applicability, acceptability, and affordability. Okay, so with this in mind, I have research question. Germany has been very active in investing in renewable energy like solar and wind, and huge effort to transit its economy to renewable energy based, especially since 2011, when the nuclear power plant in Japan meltdown sent a very stark message to the world. Okay, so this research tried to examine whether and how investment in renewable energy has enhanced energy security in Germany by applying the definitions and concept of energy security just discussed. So this is an illustration of how the energy security concept and definition apply to Germany. Okay, so we developed a 4A framework. In other words, availability, applicability, acceptability, and affordability. Okay, to examine the status of energy security. Time span is 2000 to 2019, the 2 years ago. And values of individual indicators are normalized. Okay, so we construct our lumbus by putting 4A in each corner. So perfect score has a 10, 10, 10. Then the inside area is a 200. That is the maximum available. So the lower, the less security. Higher or close to 200, more secured energy security. Okay, this is the concept and the framework. So we try to select indicators as robust and solid as possible. So here is availability indicators. We have 7 each. Okay, so AB6, 6.1 is the typically touch upon renewable energy, gross renewable energy source, electricity generation capacity. This is just capacity because without capacity, there's no available energy resources. So this is availability. Then technology, availability, we have 2. Okay, first AP4, renewable source electricity production, how much renewable energy, how much electricity produced from renewable source electricity capacity. The more, the higher applicability. Then the AP6, we look upon the R&D investment into renewable, which is a percentage of total R&D into energy industry. So this is a percentage. The higher percentage, okay, result may not be guaranteed, but without R&D investment, no technology breakthrough at all. So that's why we take these 2 indicators. And then acceptability, we just check what is the share of renewable production over total production, which means the higher share, the more acceptable renewable energy is. The lower share means less acceptable. Finally, the affordability, we do not have a specific indicator that covers affordability. So this is a research question in the future. Okay, so with this, we collect the data and then transform the data and normalize it and then analyze. So we have seen this one. The blue line shows that affordability, and something gray one is acceptability, yellow one is applicability, green one is availability. So individually, top left-hand corner is availability. Availability from 2000 to around 2005 decreased, then showed the increasing, and then around 2011 is more like stabilized. And then top right-hand corner is technology, applicability. It doesn't change much, but clearly acceptability shows then over the trend. Then affordability, we don't see, affordability more like decreasing because the 2011, they shut down the nuclear power plant. So these are trends. Then what about the inside the area? Okay, I chose just 4 years, initial 2000, ending year. Actually, ending is the highest, and then 2008 is the lowest, and 2015 is close to something highest. So if you look at here, the inside the area, for example, this one shows that initial area. Then 2008 decreased a lot, and then it shows that the area shows the increasing trend, which can interpret energy security has been improved. Okay. So with this, we have drawn some lessons to East Asia. First, availability. Okay, appear to significantly improve when you look at the one specific indicator, AB6. Technology or applicability, we do not see any visible effect with AB4, but AB6 is appear to improve, but later is petered out. Then acceptability appear to significantly improve. Okay, affordability, we don't have a direct applicable indicator. It's hard to interpret. So the bottom line is here, renewable energy can contribute to improve narrowly defined availability and acceptability as we expected. A little impact on applicability, but we conclude that there is no direct contribution to affordability, or we could say the decision is inconclusive. So this is still the ongoing research. We just completed the collect data and initial preliminary analysis. This is our interim result. So we will continue to improve our paper. Okay. So with this, I will end my presentation. If you have any comment, questions, please email me at this email address. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Yonghu, for the interesting presentation on energy security. So the next presentation is on institutional quality and energy efficiency by Professor Huaping Sun of Jiangsu University. So let me introduce Professor Sun. Sun Huaping is a professor and PhD supervisor at the School of Finance and Economics, Jiangsu University, China. His research interests include a global value chain and international trade, sustainable development and environmental economics and regional economy. Previously, he was visiting scholar at Nanyang Technological University, and he was also visiting the scholar at University of Nevada in the US. And he also worked as a postdoc at Shanghai Jiaotong University. He worked on low carbon economics, and he holds a PhD degree from Zhejiang University and a master's and bachelor from Chengdu University. Professor Sun, please.
Okay, thanks for your good invitation, Dr. Farhad, and also a lot of the old friends like Jiqiang, Shi Rock, and Da Yong Zhang. So a lot of new friends also. Thanks all for our meeting. So today my topic is about institutional quality and energy efficiency. Okay, so let me introduce some points or background for that. Actually, it is published last year in energy policy. So here, you know, China has been experiencing serious environmental pollution problem, and thus, so this problem got a lot of the books about the scholars and also policy makers. A lot of empirical results show that the transition to green technology is seen as a sustainable way to achieve a low carbon or carbon-free environment. Based on the empirical study, adopting green technology needs a strong backing and the funding of reliable government institutions. Okay, so here we focus on what's a relationship between institutional quality and energy efficiency. Well, for institutional quality, it reveals ability of a nation micro view. to measure it, we use 5 points, 5 different categories to got the index. First one is the size of the government. Second is the legal system and property rights. And third one is sound money and free trade internationally. And the last point is regulation of credit, labor, and business. Okay. So here for the points, we have 3 key points. First one is method using the SFA, just like the former scholar did that. Second is the data and results, and the last point is for the conclusion and the policy implication. Based on, we begin from the CD, function. It is energy distant frontier method. Because the energy efficiency has gained a lot to the attention, so a lot of scholars did that. Theoretically, the production technology we used is here. Not only the capital, labor, and also energy as input. Well, the output is GDP and also undesirable output like CO2 here. Okay, like Professor Zhu Peng did, we followed his framework and used the shepherd distance function. Okay, here we define the energy distance frontier as a distance between the highest score in one group and with another one specific country or point. So the energy distance is expressed as the proportion of optimal energy to the actual energy used. So here, the function here, you can see the best one is 1, then the gap is the inefficiency. Okay, inefficiency. Well, for the definition of EE implies that it is between 0 and 1. A low score means a poor energy efficiency performance, denoting a Pareto improvement in these countries. While a higher one means the country is at its optimal energy consumption. So its energy efficiency lies along the frontier curve. Okay. So here is a function. You can see the demand of the energy is here. Well, the input like capital, labor, and energy, and also other output is also here. And we use the translog function to capture the interaction of different input, not only it itself, but also their interaction effect. Okay, like half of the square part here. And the function of separate energy distance also linear homogeneous to the degree of 1 in the energy input. So therefore, we transform the function into the following one into 6. Okay. So in the right line, it's about the energy inefficiency part. Well, the other part is the former one. Okay. And then we transform the inefficient function as the following. We focus on not only institutional quality, but also the green technology innovation, because it is a very key point or the fundamental point to improve the sustainability. Okay, and also other control variables. Okay, here is our data and the results. We can see we used the sample of 71 countries over the period of 25 years, from the year of 1990 to 2014. Here is a descriptive statistical variables. You can see mostly are balanced panel data. Well, some variable is unbalanced, like the green patent. Why? Because some country has not shown much, green patent in some stages of their developing economies. Okay, so here you can see the trend of energy efficiency score for the period of the research sample. Generally speaking, it's relatively high because it's more than 0.9, right? Okay. Well, for different group, it is different. You can see for the developed country or economies, the energy efficiency score relatively higher. Well, for the developing country, the energy efficiency score relatively lower, especially for some, you know, one Belt One Road countries. So we make it in one picture using a different scope. We can see the blue line is a developed country score for the energy efficiency, relatively high, always, right? But the gap smaller and smaller. At the year of the 2008, it's almost the same, but after that time, it's still convergence. So we did another paper about the One Belt One Road countries. It's also similar trend. That means high income countries, relatively high in energy efficiency, and their trend between the gap, it's sometimes it's convergent, sometimes it's divergent. Okay, so here is the results for the empirical, you know, econometric method. We can see it's a similar, obviously negative effect for green technology and institutional quality, right? It means that the green technology is positive effect for the efficiency improvement. That means for the efficiency improvement, right? Because the dependent variable is a negative one. That means inefficiency. So the negative number or result means the positive effect, and it is very obvious. It is 3 star, right? So the conclusion and the policy implications. A green growth path is crucial for reducing emission of greenhouse gases for sustainable global economic growth, especially when 70% of carbon emissions come from excessive energy consumption, making energy efficiency a crucial concept. In recent years, therefore, government has strongly invested in the development of green technology and even innovation to enhance energy efficiency. So similarly, government institutions have been empowered to see the implications of energy policies that improve energy efficiency. We find clear evidence that green technology increase energy efficiency, and also the institutional quality turns out to be negative and statistically significant. The dependent variable are, you know, inefficiency. So following also it's the same, you know, funding with Zhang and also other scholars. So following from the funding, it is clear that government institution and green technology play a vital role in enhance energy efficiency. So some policy implication, we should establish some green investment mechanism, and also R&D should be greener to explore more on the new green innovations. Okay. Likewise, government could also offer low interest loans to enterprise to who invest more green investment, and also to increase some potential investment opportunities for the energy infrastructure sector, just like you know, some new energy, okay, points. So actually in some area, just like One Belt One Road, it's already did, just like some smart grid. It is green and high efficiency, cooperated by China and Pakistan and some other South countries in Asia. Well, for the green innovation, we also need to focus on the smart and digital technology, just like ABCD, okay? Artificial intelligence, blockchain, and big data, cloud computing, like that, okay? Okay, that's all. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Huaping, for the interesting presentation on institutional quality and energy efficiency. So let's move to the next presentation. Presentation 8 is on financing infrastructure for climate change adaptation in China, implication on energy security. So it's by Dr. Yanfei Li. So let me introduce Dr. Li. Dr. Yanfei Li is an associate professor at Hunan University of Technology and Business. He's also currently a research fellow with the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia area, and International Economic, which is an international economic policy think tank. He specializes in energy markets, energy policy, and economics of technological change. And Dr. Li's current research covers regional natural gas trade and market integration, regional power infrastructure planning and electricity trade, economic and environmental assessment of energy technologies, hydrogen economy, and energy economy environment. His academic research appears in top energy and economics journals, including Energy Economics, Energy Policy, and several other journals. And also he appeared in different medias. He got a PhD from Nanyang Technological University in Singapore and bachelor's degree in economics from Peking University in Beijing. So Dr. Yanfei Li, it's our pleasure to have you, please.
Thank you very much, Farhad. It is my honor to be here and share with you my recent research in the field of climate change adaptation. This is a work jointly done with Professor Hongyuan Yu from Shanghai Institute of International Studies and several students of his. And the specific topic is the financing of infrastructure for the purpose of climate change adaptation, or abbreviated as CCA. So firstly, why this topic? I think the motivation being that climate change is becoming a increasingly visible sort of change to not only the global physical situation, but also economic system and also our daily life. And China is a major contributor, of course, to several emissions that could contribute to climate change. China is also a country that is affected severely by climate change and its potential impacts on the economic system and also the social system. Therefore, it is a very important topic. And also we noticed that China, in its own ways, has managed to establish many mega level infrastructure projects as responses to climate change adaptations. There are some successful cases. So we would like to explore what enabled such successes, what could be the lessons for future actions in CCA in China, as well as for other countries. So typically, we can easily summarize from literature the typical instruments and tools that you can apply in promoting the financing of infrastructure for CCA. For example, favorable tax policies as incentives, or favorable interest rate for financial loans, and others like special funding sources set up by either the government or the state-owned sector, and providing soft loans, which means not only lower interest rate, but better terms such as allowing for longer repayment time and others. So these are typical tools that could be used. However, as you can easily imagine, climate change is a very complicated issue. Its consequences is also variant. And therefore, each different project in a different location could have very different nature than the rest of this kind. Therefore, each one may have very different financing mechanisms, and the required policy support might be different. So our methodology is actually to not only summarize on the high level the common instrument and tools, but also to understand the mechanism that in each different project, how the different elements of policies and different elements of the available instruments and tools could be combined and therefore deliver the best results for enabling these kind of projects. So that is the purpose of our study. And firstly, what we did is some high-level review. For example, the major policies that has been set up in the past 20 years or so in China to respond to CCA. And these are common financing mechanisms and tools, again, in some more detail that we can summarize from the literature. The specific question is, what is the working formula? To summarize my previous points, what is the working formula to enable a CCA project? So under that general questions, we raise many more specific detailed questions, such as who should do what, like what departments or regulation agencies and stakeholders are relevant to it, and what would be the priorities of addressing the climate change adaptation in different industries, in different social or economic groups, and in different geographical areas. We also suggest the countermeasures or the actions that could be taken by different stakeholders in the decision-making mechanism of CCA-related infrastructure projects. And of course, if you look at the case studies that we proposed for this study, you can see that the definition of infrastructure for CCA is quite broad. It ranges from projects like Three Gorges Dam. This has been mentioned by Dr. Shi earlier in the other study of his. This is a power generation facility that is combined with the function of moderating the river flow of the one of the two major rivers in China, the Yangtze River. Therefore, it has the additional benefits of like supporting irrigation, supporting flood control during the rainy seasons, and also to some extent, it will help improve the ecological system around the project. So it has many functions. Some of these functions are related to CCA. And we also have enlisted projects like South-North water transfer projects, because it is well known that in China, the northern parts are short of water or rainfall, and therefore it is possible, it is ideal for the water-rich south provinces to support the north provinces. But this is a mega level kind of infrastructure project, not only costly, but also the sort of benefits of this project it bears the nature more like a public good. So it is difficult to implement, I think, in any country other than China for this kind of a project. I will explain briefly our idea how such projects are enabled in China. We have also projects like Qinghai to Tibet railway projects, and also Sanjiangyuan Ecological Protection Project, and also the 3 North Shelter Belt Forest Plantation Projects. As I may briefly explain about the Three Gorges Dam, it generates electricity. Therefore, the pattern of recouping the investment or generating revenue from such project is sort of easier for this kind of project. However, for the south to north water transfer project, it may bear more features like public good, and therefore public financing is more important for this kind of project. So comparing these two, Three Gorges Dam can be invested mainly by, for example, state-owned power companies plus commercial banks, including also international banks. But south to north water transfer project needs to rely more on public financing. And we have also the Sanjiangyuan project like Sanjiangyuan, and also 3 North Shelter Belt Forest Plantation projects. These projects obviously are public goods in the public good category. So they need to also be financed by public funds. However, what we want to highlight through enlisting this project is that these projects, through their implementation, they do not only bring obvious private benefits, for example, the improvement of private companies' income or private individuals' income who are benefiting from such projects, but also they bring long-term positive impact on the social and economic system.
1 minute.
Yes, I will conclude very briefly soon. So the social benefits in other countries, I think for this kind of project, is very difficult to ask anybody to pay specifically. However, in China, we have these very high level sort of circulation of these costs and benefits at a country level. That's a very critical point, I think, in the sense that after the CCA projects are implemented, we can expect better economic growth. We can expect several industries, key industries, such as agriculture, such as several key manufacturings related to the supply of electricity and water, they can grow better. And therefore, there is economic growth. And actually, the government can benefit from such economic growth, and the cost of such huge investment can be recouped through regular tax system. We have the value-added tax for any general products or services, and therefore the benefit can be recouped. But for other countries, if you don't have such a strong government, especially central government and state-owned bank system, and state-owned a very powerful state-owned sector in power generation, in water and other utility supplies, it's not easy for them to finance such project by government or by state-owned sector or by any private company. It is probably advised as our part of our conclusion that we can set up some CCA tax, climate change tax or climate change adaptation tax in order to enable such finance. So this idea is borrowed from the experience of developing renewable energy. how we finance the development of renewable in the early days by collecting some sort of a renewable tax or special renewable fees from the electricity supply. And overall, I think that is a very useful information or lesson we summarize from this study. We're still on the way of finalizing this project. We hope that we can sharpen this study by improving the presentation and also improving the policy implications. So we will deliver this study in a few months. If you're interested, please feel free to contact me, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Yanfei, for your presentation and for introducing this interesting project. Let's move to the final presentation of this session and the whole webinar. Presentation 9 is titled, Has the Inter-Regional Transmission Grid Promoted Clean Power Development? It's by Professor Baichen Xie of Tianjin University. Let me introduce Professor Xie. Baichen Xie is a professor in energy economics and operation research at Tianjin University. His research focuses on energy economics and environmental efficiency, mechanism design of renewable energy, and energy development plan. He supervised more than 20 research projects, including the program sponsored by National Science Foundation of China, major projects of the National Social Science Fund, Energy Group of Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, and State Grid of Cooperation of China. He has chaired several energy development plans for Tianjin and Qinghai province. Professor Baichen Xie has published more than 70 papers in refereed academic journals, including Energy Economics, European Journal of Operation Research, Omega, the International Journal of Management, Science, Energy Policy, Renewable and Sustainable Energy Review, and several others. He won several awards, including Social Science Excellent Research of Tianjin, and also it's our pleasure to have him today. Professor Xie, please.
Thank you for inviting me to this webinar. And today, my co-author, also the first author of this paper, Dr. Xu Tan, will give a presentation, and I will also answer all the queries and comments. Thank you. It's turn to Dr. Xu Tan. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, the host, and hello everyone. I feel so happy to share my research today. My topic is about the interregional transmission grid and the clean power development. Today, I wanted to share the following 4 parts with you. In the introduction, as we will know that clean energy dominated by power generation is viewed as an important measure for sustainable development and environmental pollution. And to China, in our country, fossil-fired power dominated by coal-fired dominates China's power mix, and its shares had kept over 16% in the past 20 years. So to increase the share of renewable energy in the final power consumption and reduce the carbon emissions in our country, the issue is very important. In the presentation, I show you the 4 important implements that has carried out in China. We give out the actual power process in China and the target and the laws in force, and also the consequence of not being considered at the famous TGC and CET, FIT, and RPS. But however, China is also suffering from uneven distribution between resources and electricity load, such as the hydropower is mostly distributed in the southwest region, and most of the wind and solar power is distributed in the 3 North region. But more than 17% of the demanded comes from the central and eastern regions. As you can see, the difference between these two figures. To the wind power and the solar power circumference, the 3 North regions serve most of the circumference. So to accelerate the absorption of clean power and narrow the gap between them, the interregional transmission expansion respectively by the ultra high voltage transmission technology, which has the following 4 advantages: large capacity, long distance, and high efficiency, and low line loss. Before 2017, China had completed 8 AC UHV lines and 10 DC UHV transmission lines, as you can see in the figures. To the significant changes introduced by the UHV grid will have huge impacts on the clean power development and the operation of the electricity market. So it is important to study on what extent the UHV grid could promote the proportion of clean power and the reduction of carbon emissions. However, not all the studies hold the same opinions on the efficiency of UHV transmission lines, whether and how much the UHV grid has mitigated the circulation of clean power and carbon emission. It is still unknown to us. So in this study, we make this contribution simulated an equilibrium model of the electricity market through the MCP method, and then we give insight into the introduction among different participants. In our model, we use the Nash-Coulomb model, and in our model, we use the lossless DC load approach, and we considered the PTDFs. And in our electricity market model, we considered ISO producers and consumers. This is the simple distribution of our model. We considered the ISO issue, which considered lossless energy balance in the network and the transmission constraints. We employed the KKT method to solve the issue. Another issue is about the generation firms, as you can see in the functions from function 9 to function 11. We also gave out the KKT conditions of the generation firms, and then we used the equilibrium conditions which considered all of the KKT conditions for the ISO and the firms. So we will give out the market results, and especially in our data sets, we considered the power plants with 100 micrograms and about in 30 PARs. This is our results. We gain insight into the effect of the UHV transmission lines and the electricity market equilibrium. As you can see in the table 2, we compare the results from market equilibriums between UHV model and the non-UHV model. We also give 3 different load scenarios, the base load, shoulder load, and the peak load.
1 minute remains.
Okay. And in the next result part, we gain insight into the effect of the UHV grid and the electricity market equilibrium by exploring the extent to which the load fluctuation could affect the market results. And we considered for changing situations of the regions and the UHV and the non-UHV model, as you can see in the figure. And we also studied the effect of the UHV grid and clean power deployment and emissions reduction. At last, we gave our discussions and conclusions. The implications for the electricity market, we show that the regional monopolies have been weakened to some extent. And to the clean power and carbon emissions, we think that more inter-regional transmission lines that motivated the development of clean power. But however, we think that the UHV grid indeed enhanced the degree of competition in the electricity sector. But we also think that increasing the installed capacity of clean power is necessary to take advantage of scale effect in mitigating the carbon emissions. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tan and Professor Xie, for this joint work. It was interesting. So for finishing this session, and now we have the Q&A session that will be led by Professor Linhai Zhao. Professor Linhai Zhao is from Huaqiao University and currently working as Vice Director of China Center for Macroeconomic Research, which is jointly sponsored by Huaqiao University and National Academy of Economic Research. Professor Zhao got his PhD from Tianjin University, and his research field is financial risk management and monetary economics. His most recent published papers are in computational economics, finance and trade economics, and he also had several books on these topics: monetary policy and inflation expectations and their heterogeneity, housing market correction, and financial risk. And also we have Dr. Feiyang Cheng from Tianjin University, who works at the College of Management and Economics of Tianjin University. His research area is behavioral finance, corporate finance, and business ethics. He most recently published in Accounting and Finance, Finance Research Letters, and Economic Modeling, and several other journals. So it's a pleasure to have them in this session. If they have any comments, questions on the presentations, so we would be happy. Before I ask Professor Zhao and Professor Cheng, I have one question from Professor Yong-Hu Chang that presented very interesting work on energy security. Professor Chang, I know you have several works on energy security. So the question that I have is that low oil prices are harmful for renewable energy projects because it is reducing the competitiveness of these projects. So what is your suggestions in order to keep the renewable energy projects in our energy baskets for keeping the energy security, especially when we are talking about East Asia, which is the scope of this event? So Professor Zhao and Dr. Cheng, please.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Zhao Linhai from Huaqiao University. First, I want to thank Dr. Farhad and many old and new friends here. I'm a newcomer in the field of energy, and I learned a lot from you, the outstanding experts in today's webinar. First, I have one question to Dr. Zhang. Dr. Zhang, I want to know how, as we can see that you adopt 4 dimensions in your method. I want to know how do you assign weights to the 4 dimensions? That's my question.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Cheng, do you want to?
Okay. Thanks for your invitation. And I just have some minor suggestions or comments on these very solid papers, because these papers have been published in some very high quality journals, such as Journal of Clean Air Production and some other journals. And my first question is to Professor Sun, Professor Huabing Sun. And you explore the impact of institutional quality, right? But I'm curious about should we include some other new indexes such as local governments, environmental disclosure quality, or requirement when you construct your variable? And my another question is about the paper of Professor Li, and you adopt some cases to explore the impact, the effects of CCA. But I want to consult: is it possible for us to conduct some specific empirical analysis to explore the consequences or the real effects of CCA? This is my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Professor Yong-Hu Chang, are you here? Okay, great.
I'm here. Okay. So the second question, like the 4-dimension weight, right? I think that's a question. We have applied equal weight for all indicators because there is a method to find like a different weight, but we apply just like a equal weight because to avoid some unnecessary or the bias. I mean, I'm not saying this is not prevalent bias, but it's, at least we can interpret equally. So that's what you have adopted. And then how to make renewable energy in energy basket. Good question. Frankly speaking, I do not have answers If you have answers, please share with us. But as an economist, what I suggest is making the price right. So renewable energy, how we make price right, like carbon pricing. Okay, so at least if you have carbon pricing is introduced in fuel market, some like wind energy and solar energy can compete with conventional fossil fuels. So we could say like a subsidy and something, but rather than subsidize or tax, I mean, taxing fossil fuel is another way, but in principle, let's make the price right by fully internalizing carbon content and environmental impact of carbon dioxide nested in fuels. That's what I suggest. Thank you very much for your comment and questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Yongfu. Professor Sun, do you want to answer?
Okay, thanks for your good comments and good suggestions, especially from Fei Yang and also other brothers like Lin Zhao and also So Yu and also Bai Ting and also other brothers. So from Fei Yang said adding some new variables. That's good idea. Actually, we did another paper for measuring the institutional qualities special effect. That means different regions, they have some spillover effect. We did that and published maybe coming soon in another journal, economics journal. But also you're right. So some behavior variable from government can be added together. And also just like the interaction between green technology and institutional quality, their measures should be measured again for more details. That's a very good idea. Thank you so much. We will do it in future papers. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for your answer.
So, Dr. Yang Li, do you want to add?
Dr. Chen, thank you very much for your very good question, and also it's actually a very good suggestion. I think it is possible in future to further improve this work by adding some empirical analysis, especially causality analysis, like what factors influence the CCA projects and what are the outcome of such projects into different areas, social areas or economic areas. But at this moment, I think the difficulty is how to measure CCA, the financing of CCA, as well as the number of these projects, because as we try to illustrate through these cases, most of these projects that we categorize as CCA projects, they are not formulated for initially for that purpose. They have other purposes, such as just power generation, flood control, or containing the sandstorms from northern deserts. But I think in future, it is possible, if not directly available from statistical books, we can do our own estimation and therefore construct a sort of database or and therefore derive some time series or panel data through our own efforts. I think this will be a challenging work for the next stage. And if you're interested, we can collaborate in the future. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yang Fei. Professor Bai-Chen Xie and Dr. Xu Tuan, if you want to add something. Your mic is mute. Please unmute it.
No, thank you. There's no no question for us. And we also, because in our paper, we also consider the issue of energy security, but actually we focus on the electricity security. Yeah, because we have considered some factors such as grid availability and power land loss and some other issues. So that's okay. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So, okay, thanks a lot. So we finished this session, and let me conclude this webinar by saying some words. So during today's webinar, we had 9 presentations on green finance role in promoting renewable energy projects and the role of renewable energy projects in enhancing energy security. Due to COVID-19 pandemic and the global economic recession, the ongoing investment in renewable energy and energy efficiency and other green projects fell drastically. On the other hand, low oil prices reduced investors' interest in clean fuels that would threaten the Paris Agreement on climate change and several SDGs. The lack of long-term financing, the existence of various risks, and low rate of return, and on the other hand, market actors' lack of capacity are major challenges for developing green projects. So we can utilize the spillover effect of the green energy projects that would increase the rate of return. On the other hand, public financial institutions can use both traditional and innovative approaches to link green projects with finance by enhancing their access to capital, facilitating risk reduction and sharing, improving the capacity of market actors, and shaping broader market practice and condition. But public financial institutions need to avoid crowding out of private investment by engaging only in long-term lending at stable rates and at only lower rates comparing to private banks. The green R&D is among the sectors for which public financial institutions can lend. And finally, green credit guarantee scheme is another tool that can reduce the information asymmetry and decrease the expected default loss. Then it can bring the private investor to this sector. Finally, I would like to express my thanks to the co-organizers of this event, Jiangsu University, Tianjin University, Huaqiao University, ICETS, and the Society for the Studies of Climate Finance, to all distinguished speakers for their valuable contribution, and to our esteemed participation for joining this event. And I apologize that we were behind the schedule for about 20 minutes. Thank you very much for joining, and thanks a lot for your contributions.
Thank you, Farhad. Hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Farhad. Thank you all.
Thank
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.